First of all, man, I understand you want to give context, but we are now so far removed from my original point of why you have said, what's the context when Tom has called you and your friend group sexist in his video. We have gone so far away from that we're now like talking.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll simplify it. I'll simplify it. I said, okay. What's the context? Because Tommy provided no context. We're talking about something that Ludwig said on his stream after Tommy's
the
tweet.
Context he did provide in his video was how you and your friend group reacted to what happened with George and Katie, and also how your community reacted to it, which you are responsible for.
So I think those were two different like parts of the video, right?
But they're
like, I'm happy
in the same breath in the video.
We can pull up Tommy's video if you'd like. He separates the sentences. He says the whole way the internet reacted to the George situation is sexist, right? And then he says, and behind the scenes, you and your friends' sexist remarks are sexist. They're two different claims, right? He said that the internet's reaction to George was sexist. And then he said, which I'm not, he's not providing context to what that means as well. Like, what does he mean by, would you like to give clarity? What does he mean by the internet's reaction to George's situation is sexist?
Well, I think it was just like, sorry, give me a second to collect my thoughts.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think to be like, these are two separate things. They are two different sentences when they are complaining about the same issue is quite strange, because also the internet's reaction, I feel as if it is not unreasonable to assume that the majority of the negative reaction towards Katie came from George's community and your community. I feel like that's not an unreasonable thing to assume.
Well, then the question is, what did we do that behind the scenes that's sexist? Which is what the claim that Tommy makes is that we are sexist behind the scenes. And I say, well, what did I personally do that is sexist that Tommy's talking about? What's the context?
Personally did. I think it's the fact that you did nothing when you clearly are very in tune with your community and interact in the spaces a lot, which we can see, which is evident by your Reddit posts. I think it's the fact that you didn't do anything about it, which is more telling. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I did an entire space on my Twitter. I had multiple conversations on live. I had multiple discussions regarding it. I feel like, obviously, the reason that wasn't brought up in my video, two things. Mm-hmm. One, again, he said the internet's reaction, right? I wanted to address his more potent point, which is, why are you guys are sexist, right? And I go, okay, well, I'm going to address that. But then two, also, it feels like, this wasn't a situation that was hidden from or ran from. The situation that George made multiple, videos on, situation that I did, I talked about on live multiple times. And so it just feels like opening old wounds and Tommy's taking, making it like into a personal attack or something, rather than, a situation obviously that was very complex and, was very personal for a lot of people. And so that's why I didn't put it in my video. That didn't feel like a me and Tommy thing. And obviously a lot of the rest of the video was me and Tommy, or like me and Tommy and Tommy's direct friends that are saying things. But at the same time, I think those it's important to separate the point of, hey, the internet's reaction or your community or something somehow is being sexist, versus the next claim being, I think he specifically said, I do want to pull it up, because I think he specifically said you and your friends' remarks to women behind the scenes is sexist. That's a very direct claim, right? It's very direct. Like, hey, you've been saying things to women behind the scenes that's sexist, and that's there needs to be context, right? And that's why I said, where's the context? I don't know. I mean, if that's something that he genuinely, or he's hearing that from somebody or people that genuinely feel that way, I don't want to be friends with people that would be sexist to women. I don't want to be friends with people that would be making, remarks like that. And I never want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I would love, which obviously I've said in tweets and live streams, I would love anybody to come talk to me, have a conversation, anything. But when you don't provide context, but say something like that, what can I say?
Can I interject a little bit?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go
it's
ahead.
Just, I'm forgetting the stuff you're saying at the start of your sentence.
Go ahead.
So,
I'll be.
originally you're saying the reasoning that you didn't reference Tom's reference to what happened to Katie and George is that you don't want to open old wounds. But also in that video, there is so many. You never have a problem referencing any old content when it's to reinforce your point. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is in that video, there is so many old clips from years ago, but you only don't want to open up old wounds and bring up old context in this regard. That's weird.
Well, I think that it's different whenever it's a situation involving myself, like directly. Like I think that obviously when you just Tommy said and you said like the George and Katie situation. It's not the George and Dream situation. So like I'm not obviously I feel much more comfortable being like, hey, here's a clip of me from 2016 or whatever. Than I do talking about something that like I said, it wasn't something that was hidden from or ran from. It's been talked about. It's not being avoided. It's more of just like a, hey, this is me and Tommy. Let's talk me and Tommy. And then obviously Tommy's next claim was about me and about my friends being sexist to women.
Sorry to cut you off again.
Go ahead.
I think it's also, God, sorry, what was it? I don't know. Oh, sorry. Can you give me the rundown? What were you saying again at the start?
I'm sorry, I forget what initially just now.
No. Oh, yeah. Sorry. You're saying that the situation with George and Katie involve you, so you didn't feel it was right to put it in the video. However, earlier, literally a little ago, you were mentioning how you did a Twitter space. You did multiple posts about it.
Yeah, of course, because obviously George is.
You have involved yourself in that situation, and you are now part of the wider context of that situation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, definitely, 100%. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that my personal feelings involving it and my personal, like, I don't know what the right word is to use. Like I'm obviously less affected by that situation than the other parties, right? Like we both agree on that. Obviously I'm less affected than the other parties. And so this video, is between me, it's me and Tommy talking, right? It's not, not George and Tommy. It's not whatever.
I know, but I'm not arguing about you weren't effective enough by that situation to bring it up. I'm saying that it is a weird that your reason for not mentioning it in the video is that you weren't involved.
Well, no. I mean, I said there's obviously multiple things. I think that his direct, the sentence he says is the internet's reaction. If he had said, Dream, your response to the George Katie situation was something, then I would have directly responded to that. But because what am I to say? He says the internet's response, and I'm saying, well, what about my response? Like, you think what about what I said? You think that
the internet's response though was widely yours and George's community, of which half you're responsible for.
Do you think that my response to that situation was sexist?
No, I think your initial getting involved to begin with said space and posts, I think, it's difficult. I think.
I mean, it's a complicated situation, even for us to discuss. I'm sure. I mean, it's not.
No, it 100% is. But also, it's not like your initial involvement is what feels weird, because you are very aware that you have many bad actors in your community. And
of course, every community has bad actors.
Every community has very bad actors. And you are also aware that you had these now proven false grooming allegations, which it's not unreasonable to assume that this would attract more bad actors to your community. And I think having that knowledge and then getting involved in this situation, I think, is where it rubs me.
Wait, so what's the critique? Me making a space or something? Or
I'm saying that you getting involved in that while having the knowledge that you have maybe more than average bad actors in your community, I think initially brings more bad actor attention, which therefore you yourself, I know it's unreasonable for me to assume that you're able to wrangle that and do that and control that because obviously it's the.
I think you have a responsibility from your audience up to an extent, of course.
Yes, and I think that to know that you have this big toxic community, but then get involved. Sorry, 1 second.
Tubbo, again, I think it is. It's a very nuanced situation, but I mean, I feel like it's not something I feel like we're going to be able to, discuss in full, I guess. But I was there, right? It's like I feel like it wasn't. At the same time, whenever obviously George is my best friend, and also I was there. So when I have context for the situation, and input to provide to help come to a resolution, whatever the resolution was, obviously I'm going to provide that. I did it, like I said, I did a Twitter space. I gave input. I feel like I was very fair. I feel like I was very, I don't know, I was honest with how, I was as honest as I possibly could be, and as open to everybody, my fans, everybody. I don't support any kind of, harassment or hate, especially not involving that situation.
Of course you don't.
It's incredibly complex. And I think that, I think that there was a large part of the internet that, that had a bad reaction to that situation. I think that goes on both, sides of the aisle, I guess. But I think that specifically for this, again, I think just summarize the reason that I didn't put Tommy's clip that he said in my video here was because was for a couple reasons. One, he said the internet's response, so it wasn't directed at me, so it felt more or less like how do I, but I understand what you're saying.
There for a second.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again. I have the exact quote from the transcriptions up now, and the exact quote is, "With your group, I cannot believe how the George stuff went down from a year ago. I can't believe the response to it online. It's disgusting. It's sexist, man." He is directly, and this is the transcript I'm just showing on stream now, and he is directly corresponding your friend group with how that situation went down.
Wait, sorry, can you read the beginning again?
"With your group, I cannot believe how the George stuff went down from a year ago. And I can't believe the response to it online. It's disgusting. It's sexist."
So, Tubbo, if you, just to say, the way he says it, this is a recreation. He goes, let's talk about, he goes, "with your group," right? Because he says, "my friends have good hearts," and he goes, "with your group." And then he pauses, and then he says, "the internet's response to the George situation," or whatever you just read. He's critiquing.
Not the internet's response, your response, man.
I'm sorry?
In the quote, it's not the internet's response. It's
Read it
your
again.
response. "With your group, I can't believe how the George stuff went down from a year ago."
No, so,
I can't believe the
but
response.
Tubbo, watch. Okay, you're reading the transcript, but in the actual video, he pauses. He has a long pause. He says, basically, this is the transition. He's transitioning from talking about his group, right? He says, "my friends," he says, "my friends have big hearts," or whatever, right? And then he goes, "but essentially, with your group, the internet's response online," blah, 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 right? At least that's how I'm interpreting it. Obviously, we can have a different interpretation, but that's how I'm interpreting it.
I think
that could be incorrect.
That
might not be what he meant.
Of that in that sentence is the internet's response is an added-on piece of information. Like, I think that is why I disagree with your choice to not include that. For the sake
yeah,
of
that makes more
bringing up
sense.
old stuff after because I think with the wording, it's quite. I don't know.
Well, I think if you listen to if you want to pull up his video, listen to the way he says it. For me, it feels. I could be completely wrong what his intentions were, but it feels very direct in that he's transitioning from talking about his friend group, and then he says "with your group," and then he says multiple things. He says "with your group." He says, "I don't like how the internet responded to the George situation," bringing that up, and then also behind the scenes, you guys have made sexist remarks, and that's kind of like the summary for "with your group." And then he goes, "Now let's talk about you and me." So he's like he kind of chaptered the video almost. And this chapter of the video is my friends, essentially. But yeah, that okay, we can take that one out if you like, for the sake of argument. But that was one of my contributing reasons. Was I interpreted that as, hey, he's critiquing how the internet, how YouTube, how commentary channels, how Twitter, whatever responded to it, not necessarily me. So this is me and Tommy. I'm not going to address that. But then also, again, like I already said, I'm less involved in that situation. It's more of a critique on George, or the George and Katie situation, than it is on me. And then also the fact that it's reopening old wounds for people that are not myself. Okay.
I don't really feel comfortable moving on just yet. I'm just gonna watch what you've told me to watch in Tom's video.
Okay.
And play the conversation for those who are watching. Give me a second. Yeah, so I feel like the interpretation of that is pretty straightforward. I don't like we can focus on the behind the scenes comment, but I think it inevitably, him referencing how the George stuff went down is directly linked to his criticism of your friend group and is not directly linked to a criticism of online.
Okay. I mean, I interpret that differently, but I think that obviously I guess on that we'll have to agree to disagree. I'm not sure. I'll never know exactly what his intentions were with what he said, but when I was editing my video, obviously that was my interpretation of it. Whenever I thought, but I think that the next, I do think that for me, I took the next point as a more directed, like specific accusation in a way. Like again, George and Katie, everyone knows about that situation. It's been talked about, it hasn't been avoided. So the next thing is kind of an unknown where he said, I took it at least as an unknown where I'm going, he said, hey, you and your friends behind the scenes are sexist, or, to women have been sexist. And so my initial thought with that is, okay, well, that's not something that, what's the context essentially, which is obviously what I put in my video.
Right.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I think that we see that differently.
I feel like it's crazy. It's just like it's a very serious point, and to just leave it at agree to disagree feels like such a disservice to what's being said.
Well, what I guess I'm not sure how to word this. What would you have done differently, I guess, in this situation?
Well, first of all, I would have kept in the full context of the full video Tom made, because that's something your community criticized me for when I reacted to your stream, is not reacting to the full thing and taking.
Oh, that's ridiculous. It was like a 3-hour long stream. That's ridiculous. Come on. That's ridiculous. There's no way. That's ridiculous, guys. I'm saying, I'm not critiquing you. I'm critiquing my audience. That's ridiculous. It's a 3-hour long stream. You can't react. No one's going to react to the full 3 hours. Did you react to the full 3 hours? That's ridiculous.
Full 3 hours.
That's ridiculous.
Man. Yeah, but also, Tom's video is
Tom's video is 5 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I get it. But I honestly, I'll say the reach on a video, right? I feel like people obviously even on the truth video, I got so many comments that were like yap and whatever, that were like, I'm not watching this. It's an hour long. And so I did feel, I'll be honest, I felt a lot of pressure to make the video as concise and as small as possible. So I took the part, I left out things that were repeated. I left it, like, as an example, at the beginning, I didn't have any clips of him critiquing me for the R word, but I still addressed it. So I tried to have it be structured in a way where, it wasn't.
What about, doesn't he open his video critiquing you for calling his entire fan base the arse slur?
Yeah, exactly. And then I opened my video with responding to that right away. But I don't show a clip of it, for time, but also just because I'm just addressing it. So it's not, it's not necessary. In my opinion, obviously, it just comes down to editing style or something, I guess.
Editing style, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I feel like, right, we're gonna talk about behind the scenes. My friends are misogynistic. I think the reason why that is said is very much the stuff with Robbo's mate and Ludwig's mate. I think that's very much that, but also. You say that the stuff with Robbo's mate is entirely disproven to not happen. Can you show now a receipt of that? Because I actually had a call with Robbo before this stream, and just to confirm that the mate that Ludwig is talking about and his mate are two different people.
Yeah. So I'll reiterate what I said before, because what I said before was that Robbo originally claimed that I got slapped for calling a girl a whore. That did not happen. That was not something that happened.
Yeah, but did you call Robbo's mate a whore?
Yes, I did. But I provided the context to that. The context to that was it's actually my mate. So I don't know. I don't even think Robbo's. I mean, I don't know Robbo's relation to them at all. But it was one of my very good friends in a joking manner that never had ever cared. And it was someone that I read it earlier. I quoted it. It was TSK space whore in a text to someone that I was with in person right around that exact same time, and they were not upset. There was no. It was a total friendly exchange. It was not. Yeah, I understand people out of context can say, oh, there's under no circumstance you're calling someone a whore, but I'm not calling someone a whore. I'm using it as a replacement for I don't know, I'm using it in that context, using it as just a I don't know, dummy or word or idiot, come here, in the same way.
Yeah.
And so
can you also see? Sorry to cut you off again. Can you also see how the fact that it's happened with Robbo's mate and that's come out, and then Ludwig's now gone on and said it happened to his mate, and you assumed it was the same mate, messaged him, and it was a different person.
Yeah. So again, I think the context
you
with
see how that kind of
yeah. I mean, I completely understand, but I think that there's some lost context there, because one, with Robbo's mate, it's not like, oh, hey, these are two women that are coming out and saying, hey, I derogatorily called them this word. That's not what's happening. The Robbo situation was Robbo and Nicholas Cantu, out of context, trying to use a joking text message as a way to slander me. They had no idea what they were talking about. They just had that, and then they said that I got slapped for calling a whore, which didn't happen. They were just making things up, just throwing things at the wall until to see what would stick. And that was one of the things that they did. And so in that one, in my mind, I go, that's whatever. In the Ludwig situation, I don't know. Again, I don't know what that one's about. But even in my message to Ludwig, I was like, yeah, I know that it seems bad to be seemingly talking about these two situations, but you have to understand the context of it. And I also do think that Ludwig slightly misremembered what happened, because I messaged him and he replied to me. He did not reply to me. I messaged him, I said, are you talking about this situation? Because this isn't true. And he said, no, it's about someone different, but I can't say their name. The only reason I sent him, go ahead.
Do you have proof of that interaction? Because
yeah,
it's kind
sure.
of hard for me to take it at face value when Ludwig's been on stream being like,
yeah, sure,
I'll send respond.
it. Yeah, I'll send it to you. I mean? I'll send it to you. Give me 1 minute. I don't know if I want you to show it on stream, because Ludwig, I mean, I don't know, but
that's fair enough. I cannot do that. I can just take it in and be like, oh, okay, it did happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I just feel like it's very strange when there's two separate occasions. Also, another thing to point out is in your 3-hour stream you did, the only time you mention women in that stream is when you're hyperbolizing or like making really dramatic, exaggerated points with no talk of private calls or any actual evidence as well, which also rubs me the wrong way. Like in your 3-hour stream, you mentioned Hannah and Amy, but everyone else you mentioned in that stream has evidence, conversations, and stuff you spoke about, except for Hannah and Amy, and that's it. And you went as far to say that Amy is some kind of evil mastermind behind the George and Katie situation.
Oh, no, I did not. No, Tubbo.
That's very how it's interpreted.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of people on Twitter I saw people on TikTok clipping with millions of likes where it's like my rant where I'm going like, there's all NDAs, the SMP, I own all the members, whatever, where I'm acting like, hey, this is what people are treating me as. They're acting like I'm this evil villain. And it's the same thing with Amesy.
That was in a separate point.
Yeah, no, I know. They're two separate occasions. But with the Amesy thing, I was not at all saying that Amesy is an evil villain. I was making fun of myself, because what happened was after our conversation, right? We had our conversation where we talked about, you expressed, hey, Amesy said that you banned her from the Discord and after the grooming allegations, right? And then that was cleared up, right? And so before that was cleared up, there was a period of time where I was like, oh my God, Amesy's going around spreading lies about me, right? And so I over-exaggerated that sentiment, and but I was not saying she is. That was cleared up. Me and Amesy talked behind the scenes.
You're over-exaggerating. You can't reference things you've actually done. For example, when you're over-exaggerating and doing that, you also mentioned the Reddit post you released around the time of the George and Katie situation, where you were like, I think someone's pulling stuff behind the scenes, which is something you actually did. To say that immediately after being really exaggerated and being like Amy's the evil villain, heavily insinuates that in that post, which is referring to the George and Katie situation, you thought that Amy was a mastermind behind the scenes.
Yeah, no,
it's crazy that you're happy to mention that situation on your 3-hour stream, but when it comes to the video, you don't want to mention it and open up old wounds that are more extreme for people that aren't you.
No, yeah, I mentioned.
Why would you mention it in the stream then?
Yeah, I mentioned the Amesy message because I thought it was important context to give an example of when I've done the same thing that I feel like people do to me a lot. I guess like I genuinely thought for a period of time after the Katie situation happened and before I talked with Amesy that Amesy was going around and making up lies about me, right? And I was going, oh my God, why are they doing this? I have no idea. And so there was a short period of time where I had that opinion that later on, after I had a singular conversation with Amesy, I was like, wow, that was a ridiculous opinion to have. Why was I assuming that Amesy was this terrible person when they're not? And so the reason I brought that up on the stream was to give an example of a situation where I made that same mistake that I see a lot of people or that same treatment that I see a lot of people give to me, where I made an assumption because I didn't have a conversation. I was not afraid, but like I didn't reach out to Amesy to ask for clarification because I thought that I made assumptions and was like, oh my God, Amesy's doing these things on purpose or being manipulative or whatever. And then as soon as we had one conversation behind the scenes and she clears up, no, this was a misunderstanding. I didn't mean for that to happen. Whatever. Then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm so sorry. I clarified that. We had a short conversation behind the scenes where we talked about it.
Can you understand how when you go from talking about the George and Katie situation, very serious, to dramatic exaggeration of, oh my God, Amy's the evil mastermind behind everything, to then referencing a genuine Reddit post you made about that situation where you said you wouldn't be surprised if there's someone pulling the strings behind the scene. It's crazy. And then also Hannah as well. You brought up Hannah with like no reason as well for mentioning on stream that there's a rumor of the Dream SMP people having signed an NDA. Which also, there was no other evidence or context around bringing up Hannah. The same way I feel like there was no other evidence or context bringing up Amy. And those. What
do you mean for Hannah? I mean, I wasn't trying. I understand after the fact and looking back on that maybe I should have just said a nameless creator or something. It wasn't at all like a slight on Hannah or like anything that I thought would cause any problems. I was just mentioning another time. There was many times where obviously rumors were spread behind the scenes by creators. And I was giving examples of how people accidentally, like as an example with the Hannah situation, that got brought up. And that was, in my mind, totally innocent. I had a conversation with Hannah where we talked about it. And she had told me, she's like, oh, aren't there NDAs on the SMP? And I was like, oh, no, of course not. And we had a conversation about it. And she was like, oh, okay, I thought that because of this and that and, whatever. And so that was a conversation where I was like, oh, it's totally innocent. Hannah had said that before. And that was a rumor that circulated for a very long time, publicly and privately, that I somehow had Dream SMP members under NDA to not say anything bad about me or, whatever. And so I wasn't mentioning that as at all like a slight on, Hannah or anything at all. And the same thing with Aim's situation. Like I thought both the situations, I wasn't trying to I felt genuinely, I was not trying to attack them or anything. I was both times I was actually referencing situations where with Amesy, I was referencing where I was kind of wrong. Like I was like, yeah, I was in the wrong. I made an assumption about Amesy before privately talking to her. And then I said something publicly. Obviously it was alluding to the fact I didn't say her name or anything, but I said something publicly that was alluding to that, using that information. And then I felt terrible after behind the scenes. She reached out and said, oh, hey, I heard about this, about from Tubbo or whatever. And then we talked and then I was like, oh my God, I just did the exact same thing that other people do to me. And so both those situations, like I see what you're saying, but both those situations, yeah, like what context or proof should I have like shown DMs or something? I don't know what are you saying?
Yeah, no, that wasn't really my point I was making. By the way, also just for future reference, Amy's non-binary. But my point I'm making is
I'm sorry, what is for future reference? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Basically, my point I was making is with every other person you brought up in that stream, you brought evidence and you showed receipts of this happening and you showed screenshots and grabs and stuff like that. But it didn't happen with Hannah and Amy, which I think rubbed me the wrong way. And then that on top now of knowing that there's one of Ludwig's mates that you've called a whore that was upset, and also before you explained that it was a mutual friend of yours, another person you called a whore, I think that adds to how people perceive your behind the scenes interactions with women. I think it all kind of paints this picture. Is that fair to say?
I mean, I think that if you're making the assumption that I'm a terrible person that that is sexist and misogynistic behind the scenes people, then yeah, it makes sense. If you're hearing, you would take things at face value. From my perspective, I'm going, okay, Tubbo, have you had, I don't know, do you think I'm sexist? Have you had interactions with me where I've exhibited like sexism to women behind the scenes or?
All I know.
Well, I know I'm
just you put out on the internet, because like, let's be honest, we don't really hang out in person.
Okay, sure. From what I put out on the internet, you've seen, you think
I put out on the internet, all I know is that the main bit of, from my perspective, the main bit of Tom's video you cut out was about George and Katie's situation and your community's reaction to it. And I also know that you have an increased amount of bad actors in your community and still chose to get involved in that. I also know that in your 3-hour stream, the only time you brought up people without evidence was in this context, and I also know that there's two separate instances.
But what do you mean without
where
evidence? You said that a couple times. For Amesy and Hannah, you're saying
I mean,
you're
is
saying
it like
I need
showing screenshots, like showing stuff? Like it's just your word
you're-
whenever you.
but you're saying
them. But everyone else in that stream had evidence, is what I'm saying.
I guess for like Amesy as an example, like I'm explaining something that I did wrong, so I didn't feel the need to provide evidence. Like, why am I going to lie about something that I did wrong? You know what I mean?
But it's not clear that you're explaining this because you went wrong. It's like you're talking about very serious what happened with George and Crate to massive exaggeration of Amy being a massive villain, and then mentioning an actual post you made. That is not clear at any point that you were saying that you were in the wrong in that situation.
I think
at any point.
I think there's a little bit of like a not misunderstanding, but like a gap here between what we're. I mean, I guess I'm slightly confused. I think that I never brought up the I never brought up the Katie and George situation in my stream. I brought up the Amesy, which obviously I guess technically in that situation that was a Reddit post that was to that. But the point I was making when that was brought up was, hey, I also at some point made assumptions based on things that were not true about another creator in the Dream SMP, Amesy, and then I reached out, we had a conversation, and I realized, wow, I'm assuming things, and then I of course exaggerated, me like, yeah, this big bad villain, whatever is the exaggeration where it's like, it's not super far from it, but also for most people with me, it's not super far as well, where people, Dream is this horrible, this master manipulator behind the scenes, whatever. And so I was making the point that, hey, I made that same mistake. That's something that I think everyone should try and work on, and is being more like having more communication, which I think Amesy did an amazing job at communicating. I think that, yeah, in hindsight, after seeing, some people, on Twitter and other people, how they reacted to it, I could have definitely been, more like I could have had more clarity, I guess.
Responsible to have these kind of outbursts where you use very exaggerated language, knowing that things when you're involved are very regularly clipped out of context.
I think that's a valid
thing to do.
I think that's a valid question. I think that gets into like, like people understanding like irony and sarcasm, like how much should you have to regulate your, I don't know, like humor or language or, whatever, to make sure that things aren't taken out of context, I guess. I feel like when you're talking about other creators, that's definitely a higher, like, I feel like there's definitely a much higher level of responsibility there if you're talking about, another creator. So I think, like, as example, when I'm, playing an over exaggerated character of myself and being like, haha, I'm a villain, whatever. I think that's totally fine, but I understand what you're saying. I think that probably was a misstep on my part. And I'm sorry to Amesy. I didn't mean to make it seem like she was a villain or anything. I was making fun of myself. Like, I was making fun of myself. I was saying, hey, I thought this stupid thing at one point. It wasn't, I wasn't trying to cause her any harm, but I completely understand how that could happen. So yeah, you're right. I think that's my fault.
Okay. Well, thank you for saying that. But yeah, my main thing is, I'm like, that is a crazy, like, you often very regularly complain about how you're taken out of context for the things you say. And so it happens. And then to do these big theatrical characters and impressions of other streamers, I thought was quite irresponsible.
Okay, yeah, I think that's valid. I think that's a valid take. I didn't think about it like that. I was obviously I've done it so much for myself, and I thought it was clear, but I can totally see how it's not. So yeah, I totally take that. It's my fault.
Okay, cool. So to your point that we mentioned a little bit ago, like, do I think you are a sexist? Do I think you're a misogynist? From everything I've said, what I think is that overall, I don't know you as a person. And I think from how you act online, I think it's very clear that from all of the stuff you've done, that you and your friend group need an attitude adjustment when it comes to interacting with women. And that's what I've said. I don't think you're some
Can you provide some examples of that?
Yeah, I'm saying the evidence I'm talking about is how the people you brought up in your 3-hour stream came with no evidence and photo receipts for your audience. I'm saying how you engage with the George and Katie situation with the knowledge that you have an increased amount of bad actors in your community. I'm talking about how you cut out that context from Tom's reaction. And I'm talking about how how there's two separate accounts of calling a woman a whore, even though one of them, I'll give you credit, you say is a mutual friend, but one of them is still a mate of Ludwig's that was upset by it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously for that one, I don't know.
That's why I've come to that conclusion. I don't think you're an irredeemable sexist pig. That is, I think there is just an element of like a real attitude adjustment and just see how you can conduct yourself and the situations you choose to get yourself involved with to kind of be like, oh, wait, I am doing this. Even I don't know I'm doing this, but I am doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that just to to respond to the last point there, I think that it's really hard. I mentioned this before, but when there's not like context provided, it becomes really difficult, right? So like as an example, you just gave some context, but every piece of context that you gave is unspecific, right? So like, and I'm not, this isn't, yeah. So as an example, like you, okay. So, let's just take Ludwig's friend, right? This is a situation that I don't even know happened, right? And then I ask and try my best to figure out, hey, when did this happen? How did this happen? What, if this did happen, I would love to know what was the scenario where I thought this was okay somehow, so I can learn and grow from that. But I will
say you are focusing on the weakest part.
Well, yeah, sorry, that's one. Sure, that's true. That's one of them. And then like as an example, cutting out, Tommy's first, his mention of the Katie Bugs and George situation. Obviously, if you take what I'm saying at face value for my reasons for why I cut it out, then that's not do you think my reason, do you think the reasons that I've given
doesn't make sense given 2 days prior you brought it up in your live stream?
But I didn't.
You're saying those Dream, you did. Like you talked about the George and Katie situation. This is the exact thing I'm referencing with you talked about George and Katie's situation, then you did the hyperbole exaggeration of Amy, and then you referenced the real Reddit post you made about it, and you did that 2 days before this video came out.
I talked specifically about my reply about Amesy, which I guess is about the Katie and George situation, but I didn't talk about the Katie and I was like a couple steps removed, right? I mean, it was a reply
but
about.
You bring it up in the stream. Like, it's more than just talking about Amy and your misconceptions. You do bring it up, and you say the situation. Recall. Okay.
I'll take you at your word for it, but I don't recall, but I'll take you at your word for it. Maybe it was a 3-hour stream where I was like fucking ranting.
I watched the 3-hour VOD, man.
I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it. I mean, so I think that obviously, again, I don't recall that my reasonings for why I included what clips I did of Tommy. Like I think it's not like, again, when talking about whether I'm sexist or not, I think that one of your 4 reasons being that I didn't include the full context of Tommy's clip, while also asking and saying, hey, what is the context to how I'm sexist? I think that either way is like I don't fully clock how that's sexist. I guess I'm not.
Okay, yeah, but that was also a very weak criticism.
Okay, so that's 2 of the 4 though. That's 2 of the 4 you just gave. So then another one. So that you said the response to Katie's situation.
Your choice to get involved when you know how many bad actors you have in your community.
Okay, so what specifically did I do that you think was sexist? I guess.
Well, no, I'm saying knowing that you have an increased amount of bad actors in your community, and also you've been on the internet a long time. You know genuinely the wider internet's reaction. This is not real. Like, to know you have a lot of bad actors in your community, to then choose to do a space, choose to make a Reddit post and become involved.
But Tubbo, do you think, are you suggesting that I shouldn't have said anything?
I'm suggesting that, honestly, I'm saying, yeah. Actually,
really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess I wasn't.
Well, why though? Why did you choose to get involved?
Because one of my best friends was accused of something very serious.
I know, but is your best friend not capable of handling the situation on his own?
No, of course, and he did as well. But I'm also, that's something as well as, like, as an example, right now, Tommy is criticizing me, right, in this video for that, right, for involvement in that. Regardless of what I was receiving lots of criticism at the time, still to this day, obviously receive criticism for, anything involving that. And so I'm it's not, yeah, I'm not completely fully removed. This is my best friend that I live with. I can't, hey, let's just pretend this didn't happen. Like, I have to respond to that. Obviously I did a space and I did a couple Reddit, replies. And I think that I think that my initial, Reddit reply where the whole Amesy thing happened, like, I think I regret that reply, because that was done before there was more context provided by Katie's, next live stream. But I think that with the information I was presented, like, I had to say something.
Did you make any kind of post, addending what you said?
I don't remember. I think
came out?
I think that I said something. I mean, I did a space obviously after everything, which I think I did mention, things there as well. But I think I did say something when I talked to Amesy about it.